Feeling panicked when the three strangers arrived, Tandy only heightened everyone's anxiety by claiming that the newcomers were armed and heading towards them. Consequently, everyone scattered, trying to save themselves, but Carol instead went to rescue Melissa, who was being restrained. Rather than fleeing, Melissa grabbed a weapon, intending to confront the strangers, while the others hurried to the car to escape. Their plan to drive away failed when Todd lost the car keys, forcing them to hide inside the house. When the three mysterious people arrived and began searching the house, Todd finally found the car keys and attempted to retrieve them. However, when he touched a plastic doll attached to the keys, the doll made a noise, revealing Todd's location to the strangers and startling him. Realizing Todd's presence, everyone rushed out and confronted the three strangers, with Melissa wielding a shotgun and threatening to shoot if they made any wrong moves. True to her word, when one of the strangers moved, Melissa shot him. The injured stranger then revealed that they had no intention of shooting anyone and had come in peace. Shortly afterward, Daryl, the wounded stranger, succumbed to his injuries, as confirmed by his companion, Lewis. The three strangers turned out to be extremely cautious about the virus, which explained their protective gear. Now, only Lewis and Pat Brown remained, the latter previously known for traveling with Mike. After burying their fallen companion, Lewis and Pat asked for permission to stay temporarily in Malibu. Initially, everyone refused, but Tandy convinced them to reconsider, pointing out that the two men were harmless and that they had killed one of their own. Eventually, they agreed to provide shelter, and Tandy introduced them to their new home. During the tour, Pat abruptly stopped Lewis, hinting that this was a good beginning for them, suggesting they had a sinister plan against the Tucson family. Despite this, Tandy and Pat grew closer, engaging in activities that strengthened their friendship, such as crafting fake eyebrows for Tandy. When Tandy showed off Pat's creation, Gail and Erica found the eyebrows odd, which angered Pat as he felt unappreciated. Tandy, however, managed to calm him down. Suspicious of Pat's behavior, everyone except Tandy questioned Lewis about Pat's true nature. Initially, Lewis described Pat as a special, kind person, but under pressure, he confessed that Pat was actually a deranged individual who terrorized others. He recounted how Pat had once shown him corpses of virus victims, revealing that Melissa had mistakenly shot the wrong person. While the group learned about Pat's true nature, Tandy and Pat were bonding over setting a pier on fire and launching rockets, reminiscing about their shared connection with Mike. Upon returning home, Tandy was warned by the others to distance himself from Pat and isolate him. Just as they voiced their concerns, Pat arrived without his protective gear to thank everyone for accepting him. As a token of gratitude, he presented Gail with painted jeans. Approaching Gail, Pat noticed a photo of Mike with Tandy and felt deceived. He then drew a gun, pointing it at everyone, especially Tandy, and asked, "Head or heart?" Paralyzed with fear, Tandy didn't respond. When Pat attempted to shoot, his gun malfunctioned. Seizing the opportunity, everyone piled into the car to flee, but Pat, after reloading, blocked their path. Fortunately, he was too late, and the car rammed into him as they made their escape. After hitting Pat with the car, the group quickly searched for a new place to hide. Lewis mentioned that they should hope Pat was dead because if he survived, he would definitely come after them. To confirm whether Pat was dead or alive, Tandy decided to return to Malibu to check on him. While hiding from Pat, Tandy discovered Pat lying on the ground. When Tandy checked Pat's condition, he found that Pat was indeed dead, so he buried him properly. The next day, Tandy announced what he had found the previous night. Pat had been declared dead. This news relieved everyone, as they were free from the threat, except for Todd, who cried because he couldn't believe he had killed someone. To alleviate Todd's guilt, Tandy lied, saying Pat was still alive, but claimed he had said Pat was dead only to keep everyone safe. Upon hearing Tandy's words, Todd stopped crying and no longer felt guilty. The two then returned to Malibu to determine whether Pat was truly alive or not. Upon arrival, they found several writings by Pat, most of which were threats. They also discovered incense lit by Pat and jeans recently painted by him. They then announced to everyone that Pat was still alive but had left, making them feel safe enough to return to Malibu. However, Tandy privately told Carol that Pat was indeed dead. He lied to prevent Todd from feeling guilty about killing Pat. To prevent his lie from being exposed, Tandy and Carol devised a plan. Carol gathered everyone while Tandy staged a dramatic reenactment of killing Pat using a foam dummy. Carol narrated a story about Tandy killing Pat brutally. After the performance, Tandy hoped everyone believe that he, not Todd, had killed Pat. However, their plan failed when Lewis discovered the ruse and demanded the truth from Tandy. Confused, Tandy reluctantly admitted that Pat was dead and that he had seen it with his own eyes. Hearing Tandy's explanation, Todd again felt guilty about hitting and killing Pat. This time, Tandy comforted Todd, telling him he was a hero for saving everyone from the threat. Tandy hugged Todd, and everyone followed suit. Feeling safe again, they decided to return to Malibu. Upon arrival, Carol asked Tandy how he disposed of Pat's body. Realizing he hadn't done so, Tandy quickly went to the spot where he had buried Pat, only to find the body missing. As they were puzzled by Pat's missing body, Carol discovered a trail of blood leading toward the beach. She believed it belonged to Pat. They went to the beach and began to suspect that Pat had managed to escape. However, Todd was worried that if Pat returned to Malibu, he might bring new weapons to target them. Due to concerns about Pat's possible return, Tandy created an alarm that would automatically activate if Pat passed by. He tested the alarm on Carol, and it worked well. Meanwhile, Melissa built a barricade out of sand piles to use as a shelter in case Pat returned. However, the barricade startled several people, including Lewis, who was suddenly held at gunpoint by Melissa. Melissa explained that the barricade was for her protection and to help her anticipate Pat's movements. She demonstrated its use with Erica, who walked past her barricade. That evening, during dinner, Tandy demonstrated how they should fight Pat if he returned. He asked Lewis to volunteer, and Lewis pretended to be Pat attacking him. However, when Lewis approached, Tandy activated a stun gun, paralyzing Lewis. After the demonstration, Tandy and Carol returned to their room, where Carol showed him a cloak they could use for disguising themselves to avoid Pat. Tandy praised Carol's good idea, but worried that Lewis might be angry with him for the stun gun incident. Carol suggested that if Tandy didn't want to upset Lewis, he should approach him and ask to be friends. As everyone was about to sleep, they suddenly heard the alarm and gathered to find out who triggered it. When Melissa was ready, they discovered that it was Carol, who felt nauseous. The next day, Tandy implemented Carol's idea and approached Lewis to be friends. They met at the beach, where Tandy began with small talk and told a story about a lion and a mouse. After some time, Tandy asked Lewis to be his friend. Lewis agreed without mentioning the previous night's incident. Once Lewis agreed to be friends, they played catch. However, when Tandy threw the ball too far, it triggered a landmine Melissa had set up. Melissa explained that she had placed several landmines to detect Pat if he returned. That night, as everyone was about to sleep, the alarm went off again, followed by gunshots, causing panic. There was no one at the alarm, which made everyone more anxious, fearing for their lives. Lewis calmed everyone, explaining that the alarm was triggered by the tide, which set off a landmine, causing the car alarm to go off and, in turn, the house alarm. He assured everyone there was no immediate danger. Not wanting to live in constant fear of Pat, Lewis decided to leave Malibu the next day, and everyone agreed to follow him. Tandy reluctantly agreed to leave the house filled with memories. Before leaving, everyone said goodbye to their cherished items. Tandy bid farewell to his alarm, Carol to her paintings, and Gail to a doll she had dressed up to look like Gordon. Once they were ready, they got into their cars and left, uncertain of their next destination. After a long journey, Tandy Miller and his companions appeared happy, except for Gail, who had fallen asleep in her self-driving car. When she woke up, her car had stopped at a gas station because Lewis's car had broken down. Gail got out, forgetting to disable the autopilot, causing her car to drive off on its own. The men attempted to repair Lewis's car, but none were as skilled as Phil. Unable to fix it, they decided to abandon the car. That night, they rested at the gas station, eating the remaining supplies and deciding their next destination. Gail suggested San Francisco, and with Lewis's support, they agreed to go there. Everyone was excited about San Francisco, especially with Tandy making the journey lively. However, when they arrived, they found the city completely burned down. The scene shifted to 2 years earlier, revealing that the fire was caused by Tandy's antics. With San Francisco uninhabitable, they set off again into the unknown. During the journey, Erica and Carol argued about using the air conditioning. Eventually, Erica relented and let Carol use it. Suddenly, their car broke down with smoke billowing from the hood. They decided to abandon the car, and Tandy suggested everyone hitch a ride with someone else. Everyone piled into Todd's car, but it too broke down shortly after. They continued their journey on a city bus driven by Tandy. Tandy tried to cheer everyone up by singing, but it only annoyed them. Then, disaster struck again when the bus ran out of gas because Tandy forgot to refuel it. With no other vehicle available, they had to walk. As they walked, they saw Gail's car still driving aimlessly. They continued their journey until Lewis found a hardware store that could serve as a temporary shelter. That night, they voted on their next destination. One vote for Tampa, one for Vancouver, and one for Portland, which Lewis thought would have plenty of food supplies. Frustrated with the constant debates, Gail decided to head to Napa alone. Todd tried to stop her, not wanting her to leave. As Gail was about to go, they saw Melissa standing on a haystack. Melissa urged Todd to climb up and see what she had found. When Todd climbed up, he shouted for everyone to join him. To their amazement, they saw a large office building with lights on. They decided to approach the building and try to enter. As soon as they stepped in front of the entrance, they felt the cool air conditioning. They began to explore, taking the elevator up and searching for a suitable place to stay. Upon exiting the elevator, they found a paradise-like space, filled with futuristic furniture, including refrigerators and freezers. Tandy even found some frozen pizza he couldn't wait to eat. There were also functional toilets. Without much debate or voting, they decided to stay in the building. The next morning, everyone woke up, except for Tandy, who had been playing with a toy car all night. He informed his friends that he had explored the entire building, which had 5 floors. He suggested that everyone should occupy the vacant floors. Erica took the 2nd floor, Lewis the 3rd, and Gail the 4th. Initially, Todd wanted to join Gail, but she refused, so Todd and Melissa chose another floor together. Once the floors were chosen, they began using the building's electricity. Todd heated up pizza, while Gail made juice from the office supplies. However, just as the pizza was about to be ready, the power suddenly went out. The next day, Tandy looked for the building's power source to fix the electricity, while Todd used the building's water alarm system as a shower. While Todd was showering, Gail approached him to clarify things. She didn't want any issues with anyone, so she decided to end her relationship with Todd. Without saying much, she bid him farewell. When Tandy managed to fix the electricity, everyone suddenly heard something fall, which almost hit Carol. Tandy quickly secured Carol and tried to figure out who did it. Finding a wrench as evidence, Tandy immediately suspected Lewis and interrogated him. Lewis denied any involvement. The scene shifted to Todd, who, after breaking up with Gail, went to Melissa to talk about what had happened. Initially, Melissa was indifferent, but seeing Todd's sad face, she sympathized and agreed to be with him again, even ready to have a child together. This news cheered Todd up. Tandy's suspicions of Lewis didn't stop there. One night, while Lewis was using the bathroom, Tandy suddenly appeared, startling Lewis. Lewis, confused, told Tandy to leave. The next day, while Tandy and Todd were using the water alarm system to shower, the water suddenly stopped. Tandy immediately knew who was responsible and went to confront Lewis, still wrapped in a towel. Lewis again denied any wrongdoing. Eventually, Carol confessed that she had done it. She admitted to causing the disruptions because she didn't feel the building was their home and wanted everyone to leave. Tandy apologized and promised to create a comfortable place for Carol. Feeling guilty for her actions, Carol requested to be punished. She was mockingly sentenced to beheaded. During the mock execution, Tandy gave Carol a small model of her dream house. Tandy wanted to apologize to Lewis for having suspected him and to mend their friendship. To do so, he decided to create a song based on Lewis's love story. Lewis shared that his girlfriend's zodiac sign was Pisces. They lived in Seattle, and the last time he saw her was before she flew to Tokyo. After gathering some details, Tandy performed his song, which unfortunately bored Lewis immensely. Despite this, Tandy persisted in following Lewis around, trying to win his favor. Meanwhile, Carol was similarly persistent, but her focus was on convincing Gail to be a grandmother to her future children. Gail, enjoying her ice cream, firmly refused. Back with Tandy, he eventually discovered what Lewis's girlfriend looked like. He told Lewis he had a small surprise for him. However, Lewis, who already knew what Tandy was up to, insisted he would never return to Seattle and shut the door on him. Tandy's repeated attempts to approach Lewis were met with rejection, even when Carol tried to help. Ultimately, Tandy resorted to using a stun gun to incapacitate Lewis and take him on a trip against his will. During the journey, Lewis lamented that Tandy shouldn't have done this, as he was convinced his boyfriend, Mark, was dead. Tandy argued that miracles happen, citing his own reunion with a sibling he thought was dead. After a long trip, they arrived at Lewis's former home. Tandy encouraged Lewis to leave a note for Mark, hoping he might read it. Entering the house, Lewis was flooded with memories of Mark as he saw their photos together. While Lewis was lost in his emotions, Tandy suddenly appeared, much to Lewis's annoyance, and he asked Tandy to leave. Tandy, however, refused to go. The scene shifted to Carol, who was still trying to persuade Gail to be her children's grandmother. This time, Carol presented a script for a play in which Gail would play her mother. Carol wanted Gail to sign a contract to formalize this arrangement. Gail firmly refused and said something that hurt Carol deeply. The scene then moved to Todd and Melissa, who were discussing having children. Todd, sensing something off about Melissa, declined and pointed out that she had changed. Melissa indeed was acting unpredictably, and after Todd refused to have children, she revealed a large hole she had dug behind a poster. Back with Lewis, the next morning, he prepared to return to the Tucson family. Before leaving, Lewis followed Tandy's advice and left a note for Mark. They then set off, but Tandy insisted on making one last stop. Carol, in the meantime, continued her relentless campaign to get Gail to sign the contract. Gail, exhausted by Carol's persistence, finally gave in and agreed to be Carol's mother. Tandy's final destination turned out to be Tucson, where he returned to his house to retrieve his last friend, a volleyball, after Mike had died from the virus. Tandy left with a heavy heart, still mourning his brother. Lewis tried to console Tandy, and they decided to head back together. This is the end of The Last Man on Earth Season 3 on Part 9. Like, comment, and subscribe so I will soon make a recap of Part 10 for The Last Man on Earth. Thank you for watching.